sisters, my name is Bishop Rawlings. I've been asked by the family to conduct this funeral service. And seated behind me on this stand is State President Kurt Johnson, a neighbor and friend to the Hansens. Prior to this service starting here, we had a family prayer given by John Slater, who is a son-in-law. And I'd like to recognize our prelude and our organist today, Sister Lene Kirkham from the 25th Ward. We will have an opening hymn, I Need Thee Every Hour, hymn 98, and our chorister, Sister Emily Gibbons.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be gathered here today to celebrate the life of Peggy Hansen, our beloved grandma and mom and friend. We're so grateful for the example that she was in each of our lives. We're so grateful for our lives to have crossed paths and to have learned from her example. We're so grateful for the joyous reunion she had with smile, the love of her life. We're so grateful for the knowledge that we have that we will one day also have that joyous reunion with our family and our friends. Heavenly Father, please bless us here today to be able to feel peace at this trying time and to look to Thee for guidance, to feel Thy love. Please help us as we go about today, that we're able to remember Peggy and all that she did, and remember all of the fun stories that we have and memories with her. Help us to be at peace and feel the love. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
We'll be first pleased to hear from Kelsey McBride, who is a granddaughter. We'll have a musical number following her by Annie Slater, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Our next speaker will be Leslie Hansen, and followed by her will be Laurie Slater.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm the oldest grandchild I belong to Leslie. Being the oldest, I've been part of the evolution of my grandma going from mom to gram. She responded to Grams, Grammy, and Grandma as she beamed with joy to be called any of the above. Through the duration of my childhood and early adulthood, we had the opportunity to travel as an entire family. By entire family, I mean everyone, dogs, close friends, and in-laws of the spouses included. There have been multiple moments where everyone pauses and we know the current frustrations or setbacks will make for the best memories down the road. Today, I want to share the top 3 moments that I was asked to share prior to Grandma getting dementia. I'd like to preface these memories with 2 very important details that I'd like you to keep in mind throughout my stories. The first detail is my grandma was mildly dramatic. Anyone who spent a little bit of time with her knew that was the case. You could almost guarantee some sort of response or reaction out of her when things didn't go according to her plans. The second detail I want you to remember is everything was her fault. If she was in the house and my grandpa was in the pasture working and something went wrong, it was her fault. If grandpa made a mistake and grandma was in a different city or state, that was also her fault. We've all laughed about that for decades and even teased grandpa about it prior to his passing. If the name Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth mean anything to you, maybe you can understand how this particular story came to fruition. For us younger generation, all we could do was chuckle when those names came up, but not in front of Grandma. We had planned a family trip to New York City. Every detail was perfectly planned out as Command Sergeant Major Al and Ty Babe Leslie were at the helm. We shoved in all the sightseeing, food, and fun we could dream of, but the most important event of this trip for Grandma was her first Major League Baseball game at the old Yankee Stadium. I'm certain her childhood dreams of clouds parting, angels in the outfield, and entering the iconic stadium to eat Cracker Jacks and hot dogs would be the moment she could say her life mission was complete. The only thing that could ruin this life-altering moment was a little rain. As luck would have it, rain was predicted. The morning we were supposed to attend this blessed event, it was a downpour, and Grandma was not impressed. As we stepped onto the elevator where we could see a window outside, Grandma lost it. She said, and I quote, "This was supposed to be the best day of my life and it's raining. Everywhere I go, there's a rain cloud that follows me. There is always a rain cloud over my head." Several of us in the elevator did an about face so she could see us trying not to laugh, and others attempted to reason with her, but there was no reasoning. We attended the game, we had a blast, and the rain didn't impact our memories of whatsoever. When we revisited this story many years later, it was filled with laughter, and my grandma said without even cracking a smile, "You better tell this story at my funeral." And it wasn't funny, but it really was. The next story was all her fault, just as my grandpa. This story is being shared from first-hand experience as I was in the vehicle as a witness to the event, and I solemnly swear to tell the truth. We had an annual Rock Creek trip planned. Everyone always met at the grandparents so we could caravan together. We looked forward to this trip every single year. We made special food, we made special menus. Everyone loves this trip. As every other trip before, we met at the grandparents. We were about to caravan. Grandpa was in the front and everyone else was supposed to follow. As we pulled out of the driveway, he went slow so everyone could catch up. At last, everyone was in motion and we approached the stop sign on 3rd North. Upon stopping, there was a fierce jolt followed by a very loud crash and a small slew of vulgarities. The caravan had clogged 5th East and Grandpa quickly exited the truck at the head of the caravan to determine what the ruckus was all about. It was quickly apparent that the camp trailer had completely fallen off the hitch and the trailer hitch had dug a baseball-sized hole in the asphalt of 5th East. Without hesitation, I saw the men of our family rushing to the side to help where they could, and my grandpa immediately started the finger pointing. Peggy, you came out and were talking to me when I was hooking the trailer to the truck. You distracted me and made me forget to put the pin in the latch, and that's why the trailer fell off. Everyone who heard in close proximity began laughing, and all the men stepped in and they were able to reattach the trailer to the truck, and we were on our way. As we revisited this story, we all laughed, even Grandpa. His reasoning was ridiculous, and it was just an honest mistake. However, my grandma asked me to stand at her funeral and tell everyone formally that the trailer falling off the hitch was in fact not her fault. The last story I will share, again, a first-hand encounter. I was in the backseat of the Crown Victoria when this event unfolded. We were on our way to Disneyland and we're in the typical Hansen caravan. I was in the backseat as we were leaving Mesquite from one of our 50 bathroom stops, and yes, those were my grandma's fault. We were headed to the freeway on-ramp when my grandma said to my grandpa, "I don't know if everyone is all together to follow, go slow." And Laurie did remind me of the detail of this story. As we pulled out of this gas station, I think my grandpa forgot you should use the curb that's like made for cars, and he just drove straight off the curbs. It was already off on a green note. In frustration, Grandpa forgot to clear his blind spot as he jerked the wheel to the right and directly into a big jacked up truck, making the Crown Victoria no longer drivable. The Crown Victoria was taken to the Ford dealership and we picked up a rental car and proceeded to our Disneyland trip. I vividly remember the recount Grandpa shared with the family as we pulled over together moments after the wreck, where he said, "I was going to get on the freeway and Peggy told me that was the wrong ramp. Had she not said that, I wouldn't have hit that truck." I'm here today to stand before you and say that it wasn't Grandma's fault who caused the accident, despite the recount of my grandpa. I want to point out that because of our grandparents, we know what it's like to truly be a family. Our memories of travel, holidays, steel days, Sunday dinners, and a sense of home is because of the life they created for us. Many of our life struggles could be sorted out around their kitchen table, and you never knew loyalty like theirs. Some of my hardest days were made better because they gave us the space to always go home. Back some time ago, I had an emergent surgery in the middle of the night. I was really sick and mostly out of it. I have little to no memory of the days following the surgery due to the medication, but one thing I do recall is waking up briefly in the PACU, and the first face I saw was my grandma. I immediately knew that I was going to be okay, and that even in the middle of the night, she would show up for me. I've never wondered if she would show up for me. I never left their house without a generous offer from my grandma to take whatever I wanted or needed from the storage room. Grandma worried endlessly about every single one of us, and I'm hopeful her passing to the next life doesn't lead to her worrying more, as she will now have real-time visualization of each of our struggles instead of the made-up struggle she assigned us. If Grandma was awake, she was fretting about the kids. She worried because she loved us so significantly. She couldn't handle the thought of one of us having a hard day or a hard period in our lives. Our grandma and grandpa thought we were the best group of grandkids who ever lived. The community and anyone who saw the license plate cover on the back of the truck knew their position on the matter. Grandma and Grandpa proudly sported a license plate cover that read, "My grandkids are cuter than yours." I know for me, every time we talked on the phone or in person, she was always talking about how much she loved the kids, how much the great grandkids meant to her and how cute they are, and how proud she was of each of us. We were all the most important and favorite grandchild. There will never be anyone who rivals the sense of belonging, at least not for me. I'm so grateful and consider myself and the grandkids of our family lucky that we've had our grandparents for as long as we have and to have made the most out of our time together. I'm so grateful that they taught us to cherish one another, even though cherishing leads to such heartache when they pass to the other side. Our grandparents made our family, and though the holidays and family gatherings won't ever be the same, the peace of Grandma and Grandpa being together with a sound mind is what we have to keep in our hearts and remember when we have our moments where we miss them so terribly. I have faith that we will all be together when our time comes, and they'll welcome us to join them with the same loving arms. We all know how much Grandma loved us, and I sure hope she knows how much we all love her and will miss her.
I'm Leslie Hansen, and I'm Peggy's oldest daughter, and forgive me that I have my talk written down on paper instead of cell phone because I can't see it in the office. Anyway, so Peggy Blake Hansen, my mom was born July 9th, 1942 in Salt Lake City. She was George and Alice's second child. She had an older brother, Robert, Uncle Bob. There was quite a significant difference in age with them. He was exactly 16 years older than my mother. As the story goes, my grandmother was told by a doctor in Bingham Canyon at the age of 42 that she was pregnant, and all she had to say was, "You're a damn liar." And it was pretty traumatic for her, yes. My mom was very young when Bob joined the military and married Velma. Oh, how my mother loved Bob. Bob was like the bomb. We worshipped him, and we still do. As children, we loved him, and we considered him and my Aunt Velma as our grandparents because there was such a generational gap there. And we're grateful that we still have our Aunt Velma, and she's 93, 92. So we have really, really fond memories of both of them. My mom was raised in the town of Copperton, which to us is utopia. Anybody who knows Copperton, it's like the ultimate place. Copperton was a small town, and all of the homes were owned by Kennecott Copper. And I was told the story that that Kennecott would come in every year and paint the inside of the house, and every 3 months, or every 3 years, wallpaper anything they wanted to wallpaper in the house. It was maintained to the nines, so it was a beautiful little utopia place. My mom's extended family all worked there, so in that community we had our aunts, our great-grandmother, grandmother, cousins, everybody lived there, so it was so fun for us because we knew people there. And when I was a little kid, I'd go around and kiss all my uncles for a quarter, and I'd come home with a lot of money every Sunday. As a child, and in the early years of my marriage, we would always go for the 4th of July to the Kennecott Copper 4th of July. They had a huge breakfast, and they had games, and the kids would earn money there, gunny sack races, things like that. It was really fun, and it was a real, true community. I loved that my mom would take us. Well, let me say this first though. They had, anybody who got to Copperton had this is what I described it, the biggest, hugest swings you can't even imagine. A huge merry-go-round, and the tallest, scariest, hottest slide you've ever seen in your life. I'm sure it was definitely not OSHA compliant. We loved when my mom would take us to the baseball games behind Bingham High School because Kennecott would sponsor them, and they would have garbage cans full of ice with every soda you could think of, candy, popcorn, as far as you could see, because it was like endless money because of all that copper, I guess, they were pumping out of that place. But most notably, my mother raised us that God lived in Bingham High School. No doubt that's where he is, and he would go from there to Yankee Stadium and back. So we have videos, and I don't know if the CNAs are still here if they left because I took that to work. They had videos of my mother out of her mind singing the Bingham school song, doing these crazy hand gestures and all these things, and the kids thought it was hysterical. So she was singing that stupid Bingham Minor song all the way until she couldn't speak anymore. My mom was lucky enough to have 4 lifelong friends. That was Bonnie, Linda, Claudia, and Nancy. Claudia kind of came in a little bit later in the French Mexican high school, but Bonnie was nice enough, I can't even see where she's at, to help me with some stories, and Simon shared them here. My mom loved adventures. They would ride their bike to Lark, and if you know where that is, you have to come out of the canyon and then over into Lark. It's a small town close to Copperton, but it's pretty good. They also rode bikes all the way to Harriman, which was at least 5 miles away, to play church softball. After the games, they retired, so Bonnie's dad who would come to the game in their truck that they called the putt-putt, and would give them a ride back to Copperton. Not my mom. She'd say, I rode my bike here, I'm gonna ride my bike home. And she said she was so stubborn, and her dad would be frustrated because he would have to drive 2 miles an hour all the way back to Copperton because my mother would not put her bike in the truck. They would hike the hills around Copperton. They would set up a camp. They would leave all kinds of things, utilities, matches, and cooking things for hot dogs, hamburgers, for the next time they went. Sometimes they would invite others to come. The camp overlooked Lark, so they would have to sneak through Kennecott Copper property to get there. They would crawl through flood tunnels, all kinds of crazy stuff, just to even get to where they wanted to be. Some say that they wouldn't want to do it because it was way too much work. After grade school, the girls from Bingham and the surrounding areas would all go to the same high school across the street from my grandmother's house. They would go 7th grade through 12th in that one school. And Lark was also included in the high school, so it would bring just lots of kids from all over. Claudia was a girl from Bingham whose dad had a yellow Jeep. Her dad let her take the Jeep even though she didn't have a license. My mom would always ride in the front seat and she would say, I can't sit in the back seat because my legs are too long. So that was her default, to always be in the front. These girls' actions would have got them in so much trouble with the police nowadays. They wouldn't get away with that. After the girls graduated, got married, and went their separate ways, Linda went to Phoenix, Nancy went to New Jersey, Bonnie stayed in South Jordan, and my mom lived in American Fork. When Linda came home, the girls would always meet at Little America downtown. It was their favorite restaurant. They would laugh and tell old stories and the crazy days in Copperton and Bingham. My mom loved to talk about Bingham Canyon. I know every single person here has heard at least 5,000 same stories over and over. There was always visiting with old Bingham, I think I'm saying this right, Binghamites. My dad and Max, and my dad and Mac, Bonnie's husband, would sit in lawn chairs while my mom and Bonnie would visit. And they were the social butterflies of the 4th of July or any events that they had in Copperton. When my mom and Bonnie were young, they talked to their parents into letting them take the car to Phoenix to visit Linda. And I guess Bonnie's dad said, don't you stop at any gas stations and talk to anybody and don't leave the car because the old men would come out and say, you need a new tire, you need this fixed. He said, they're lying. Don't, just get your gas and get on your way. They ended up loving going and visiting Linda. I remember my mom doing that when we were kids. My family would go camping with Bonnie and her family at Lake Powell, boating. We loved it so much, and it made us really close to our kids. And we have a lot of really fun memories there too. When my dad got sick, Bonnie would come down with Mac and they would help in the garden, just because it was so big and cumbersome, and I'm sure they benefited too from some really good vegetables. Bonnie came to the care facility when my mom was sick and didn't respond. She didn't respond really to anybody close to the end. I told my mom, I said, Mom, Bonnie's here, and my mom looked up and said, oh, Bonnie. And so it was really clear to Bonnie that my mom actually remembered her name, and it was really great for Bonnie. My mom was the first to pass of all 4 of the girls, and well, that's not true. Claudia passed. So Claudia passed away first, and now my mom. January 23rd, 1963, my mom and Dad met at a party in Salt Lake City. The following Sunday, they went sleigh riding. As the story goes, my dad put my mom on the front of the sleigh. My mom fell off the sleigh. My dad rolled over her ankle and broke it on the sleigh. And that was the first date. He felt so bad and so guilty that he thought I better ask her out again. So he asked her out, and he came into the house, and I think my grandpa, who I only knew him as a child, and I think I was like 5 when he passed away or something like that. But I'm sure, I think he could be intimidating. He looks scary in some of the pictures that we've seen. Debbie probably could speak, and he sits my dad down at the kitchen table to have a talk about this ankle incident. And my dad was so nervous, and you guys all know my dad was ginormous. And he stood up, slammed his head on the chandelier and shattered. So this is day 2. And so my mom said her dad really wouldn't talk to him. Like, she's like, he's an idiot. And so the 3rd date, there was like a time gap of 3 weeks, and he finally said, I better come back up. And so now he was going to impress my grandpa with his sports skills. And so he tells my mom to go get a tennis racket, and they're going to hit tennis balls against the side of the house. Well, he picks the side of the house that has this ginormous picture window. Well, you guessed it. The tennis ball ended up in the living room. Shattered the huge window with the tennis ball. Because I'm sure he wanted to be all impressive and hit it as hard as he could. We loved it. Every time he'd tell a story, we would laugh. Let's see, I really, really wish I could have been there to see what my grandpa thought of my dad. It would have been really fun, because I'm sure he had a lot to say. I guess it was 3rd time was a charm, because 5 months later, my dad proposed, and on August 3rd, 1963, they were married. 30 years later, on June 11th, 1993, they were sealed in the temple. They purchased their first home in American Fork, that's right here on 3rd North. They lived in the same house all of our lives and their lives. My mom loved her huge yard, her huge garden. She took pride in flowers, fruits, and vegetables. My mom loved to take flowers to people that are sick in the ward or having a bad day, and she loved to just put a smile on people's faces. The veggies were also a gift that she would give to lots of people, and she would, if she just saw somebody and she had vegetables in her car and they looked like they needed something, I can't even imagine what she was saying to when she pulled over. You look meaty, here's some vegetables. I don't know. But I know she was known for doing that too. She really, really loved to serve. She did. And she worked part-time at Durfee's. Kay is still back there. I'm going to add a little bit to this because it reminded me. I don't really know that they really worked at Durfee's, because whenever I called there, they would pick up the phone and they'd say, it's daughter number 1 on the phone, and what does she want now? And then you'd hear them laugh and chatter, and the employees there were really close. And one of them was my 5th grade school teacher that works there in the summer, and so the dynamics is really great. Then I found out stories that somebody in the community, they would just take the pant leg and sew it closed after they cleaned their clothes. So some guy would go to put his pants on and his foot would come through the hole. And it was somebody at Durfee's knew, and they would laugh. They would sew fur inside of pants. They would, they would tell me to stand in the beginning. I remember it, and my mom would get these phone calls, just mad people, because and this bishop that they absolutely loved, they sewed lace on the ends of all his white shirts. So they had a lot of fun. I don't know if it was a real job, but they loved it. Thank you, Kate, because they loved that. She loved that family so much. Let's see. My parents had 3 kids, me, my brother Brad, and my sister Laurie. The family was everything to my mom and dad. That's one thing I really have to say about my grandparents. They really taught their kids to love and genuinely love their kids, love their grandkids, teach your kids to love everyone and not be judgmental. And so I think that's one legacy that my kids are really gonna remember. Because they taught us by example, and they taught us to have a bond. We needed to have a bond with each other. I wanted to share a few funny, crazy things my mom used to do. Hopefully, I don't get hit in the head, but anyway, we still smile about it. One of the biggest things that we ever did in the summer was road trips. We'd go to my Aunt Nell's in Oregon, we'd go to Yellowstone, we'd go to southern Utah. My mother, she would get a huge magnifying glass and a paper map. Even when we had GPS that was telling us to turn, she would still say, no. She'd say, don't turn there. That's not where you're supposed to turn. It would be so frustrating, and my dad would be so mad because we knew where we were going. It would just make us crazy. In 1983, we were driving to Vancouver to the World's Fair. We were driving through Seattle. All 3 kids were sitting in the back seat. My mom was looking at the map, and of course she's yelling at my dad, "Get in the other lane, get in the other lane." In Seattle, they take 1 lane during, what do you call it? Tides, traffic, whatever. They would say in the carpool lane, they'd switch it going the other way. So all of a sudden there'd be 2 lanes going the opposite direction. My mother had told my dad to get in the lane, that now they're coming head on at us. And my dad, she's screaming, "Get over, get over, get over." And you guessed it, the cars were head on, my mom's screaming, my dad is yelling. They got out of it. It wasn't nearly as dramatic as it sounded from my mother screaming and my dad screaming back. And my mom looked at my dad and said, "Al, Al, Al, stop screaming at me. I'm seeing stars, I'm seeing stars." All 3 of us kids started laughing and put our head between our legs literally because we couldn't stop laughing. And my mom reached over and grabbed my dad's thigh. I think he was bruised for a month. She pinched it so hard. Yeah, we thought it was pretty funny. My mom got teased for years because it was way far too dramatic. Everybody here knows this, and you're free to laugh, and it's okay. Did you ever hear her not talk? I mean, like, for 30 seconds. I mean, we turned it into a game. We would say, "Let's go from this stop sign on 5th East, just the block, and see if she doesn't say anything." Oh no. She did. She never, ever, ever. And my Uncle Bob said to me, "The happiest day of my life is when we were driving to Yellowstone with your mother." And I said, "Peggy, do you ever shut up?" And he goes, "It was the happiest day of my life because she didn't talk to me for 2.5 hours. So we laughed so hard because we know how he is. He just had it. He just couldn't do it anymore. One of my favorite things was Disneyland. My mom didn't know she was quite wanting to ride the rides. She said, "They're going to flip around, they twirl, I don't like it." So she took a Dramamine, she took patches and put it behind both of her ears, and we lost her kind of in the crowd. We couldn't find where she went, and we're looking for her, and all of a sudden I see her in the distance, laying flat on a bench, asleep, with one leg up on the top of the arm rail, snoring. You know, people are walking by going, "What is that?" So when we teased her about that a lot, because it was so bad. I wanted to share something. And last thing, if you ever had her in your car, if you ever took her for a Diet Coke or took her down by the lake or whatever, she would notoriously shake the ice nonstop, and it would make me so insane. And if she was shaking it, it meant she needed you to pull over and get her another Diet Coke. And still, even in the facility, when she had really kind of lost it, and I would walk in, I swear to you that she did it to me on purpose. She would just shake the ice. It was maddening. In closing, I want to share one thing that happened 2 weeks ago. Dennis Holly came in and they had a visit, and she was kind of out of it. I don't know that she really knew what was going on, and after about 15 minutes, she kind of started to wake up a little bit. And Dennis said, "Do you mind if I give her a blessing before I leave? I'd like to give her a blessing." And so, and everybody was there, all the kids, because we knew it was getting bad, and my brother, Laurie, everybody was there. And so he gives her this beautiful blessing, and she's sitting, I don't think she was holding her arms, but she was sitting there. And right as soon as Dennis said, "Amen," she goes, and my mother hadn't spoke in a sentence for probably 6 months. She goes, "What was that for?" And all of us, none of us did anything for about 2 seconds, and then we busted out laughing. She's so stubborn, and she was like, "Why?" It was great, and Dennis, and it was so much fun to watch Dennis and Chris laugh. They thought it was hysterical. Laurie and Brad and I were told that once my mother passed, and it's known that usually the families don't stick together and keep the same traditions and have Sunday dinners. It just kind of all changes because there's not somebody driving it. As a family, and when my dad got sick, it was too hard on my mom to take care of him and do the dinners, and so I ended up just starting to do them in my home. And the kids, nothing's changed. We still do the Sunday dinners, we still have the holidays, we've got plans for tomorrow night and Christmas Day, and we're going to keep the extended family together because that's what my mom and dad expect. And my dad told me that, and I promised him before he died I would do it. I think that it's really, really important, and I know that that's something that they instilled in all of us, and I promised my mom now too, I will make sure we stay together and we're close. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
When my dad passed away, my mom asked me to speak and talk about some of my favorite memories of my dad. And I thought that would get me out of doing this. But so I want to share some of my favorite memories of my mom and why I was so grateful to have her as my mom. And I'm just going to start. This does not go in age or timeline, so they're kind of random. But as I was brainstorming, I just wrote it down. All of you know that my mom never stopped. Anyone that knew my mom, she never stopped. She was going all the time. She would make me tired, and I was a kid. And my memories of her were in the summer. And I would wake up, and she was always out in the garden, working before the sun came up. And in the evening, when she would finally start to slow down, we would sit out on our deck that my dad had built. And I remember snapping snapping green beans, string beans, and shelling peas until my fingers hurt. And I remember it's just such a great memory that I will always have of my mom. And I'm pretty sure in the fall, my mom bottled everything. Everything they grew, she would bottle. She would bottle pears, peaches, cherries, anything that we had, she would bottle and can. And her storage room down in our basement, we called it the fruit room, was the most beautiful storage room anyone has ever seen. Every can was jar was labeled, and it was beautiful. And she would also make grape juice. I remember my dad just putting all the grapes in there, and we would have that fresh grape juice every winter. And another thing that she would do, and this is a memory of mine because I loved helping her, but she would make tomato sauce, stewed tomatoes, salsa. Sometimes she would make spaghetti sauce, and it would just go everywhere. Of course, we had to do it outside because it would make a mess in her house. But we would do it outside, and me and my dad would just plunge the tomatoes down, whatever this is. If you guys can, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't. I didn't pick that up from my mom. But I would grind it while my dad would pound it down, and I loved it. It was so much fun. And then our family favorites, she always made homemade pickles. And we loved bread and butter pickles and my mom's famous mustard pickles. And somebody in this family has got to learn how to make those mustard pickles. It probably won't be me, but someone's got to learn how to do it because they were our favorite. I loved when my mom would talk about Copperton, and it really was her utopia, and she truly made it the way it sounded. I would want to live there, and she made it sound like a Hallmark movie, little town in a Hallmark movie. And one of my favorite stories that she would tell me, and I don't know why there were so many, and I don't know why this one stands out, but she would talk about when it would snow, and the snow would get so deep in Copperton because they were up in that canyon, and she said she would lay in bed and she could hear the milkman coming. And she said she could hear, it was so quiet, and in the morning she knew she could hear the milkman coming and the bottles clanking, and she could hear him through the neighborhood. I don't know why that stood out to me, but I loved it. One special memory I have of my mom, and I'm so grateful for this, she introduced me to a metal lark. And when I was a little girl in elementary school, she would walk me to school down to the stop sign right on 50th and 3rd North, and when I would turn, she would come home. And one morning when we were walking down the street, we heard a meadow lark. And she told me that when she was young in Copperton, the birds would always say, Copperton is a pretty little town. And on that day, my mom, oh, they changed. And she said, Laurie is a pretty little girl. And I will never forget that. I'm so grateful for her. Because when I hear meadow larks to this day, I always hear my mom. And I pass that down to my daughter. And now it says Lainey is a pretty little girl. And she thinks that bird is hers. And when she was little, we'd hear them all over the place. Mom, my bird followed us. And one time when we were out camping, hours away from our house, Lainey heard a meadowlark, and she said, my bird followed me. And so that is something that I will always treasure with my mom. Something my mom did, or we loved to do, is we'd go camping to Fish Lake. And my dad and his friend Gary loved fly fishing so much. And they would go and they would spend hours fly fishing. And my mom and Sharon would take off and do hikes. And one year, I went with them on this hike, and I loved to hike too, but we weren't on a trail. We were hiking up a mountain. And because I was in junior high, I had flip-flops on, because that's what makes sense. And we were hiking up this mountain, and I didn't know where we were going, but I just thought they knew where we were going, and we just kept hiking. We kept getting higher and higher and higher, and we're climbing over fallen trees and going through just branches, and all of a sudden we came into this clearing, and it was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. It was a meadow, and you could hear a stream, and there was actually, I'm not making this up, there was a beaver pond, and there were deer in the water. The water wasn't deep, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I will treasure that for the rest of my life, that day that I got to go with my mom on that beautiful hike. I know she loved to do it, and we would just go hiking back down, and there would be my dad and Gary waiting for us. Another memory I have is when I was in kindergarten. I remember my mom would pick me up, or when I would walk home, I would come home and she always made me lunch. And I would get to eat that on my big yellow bean bag that we got for Christmas. And I would get to watch Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street before I would go out and play with my friends. And when we would go deer hunting, another memory I have is deer hunting. I never went deer hunting, it was camping for me. But I remember waking up in the bunk of our really old trailer, and I could hear my dad and Brad, and it was so cold. It was always so cold, and it was dark, and it didn't make any sense to me why somebody would get up that early in the morning to go hunting. And I remember after my dad and Brad would leave, my mom would say, come down here and cuddle with me. And I would get to climb down into the bunk and climb into their bed, and their warm sleeping bag, and I'd cuddle up against my mom. And their bed was so much more comfortable than that bunk, and I loved it, and we would get to go back to sleep. My mom loved us playing sports and watching sports. And I remember going and watching Leslie play tennis up at the junior high, and that was something I did not pick up on. And my mom loved tennis as well, and I remember going up there, and I swear Leslie played for hours, and there was no shade. There was never any shade. And I look like I need shade, right? So I needed shade, but it was always so hot. And I remember those days that I never could play tennis. That's one thing I did not pick up from my mom. And I will never forget this. When Brad played for Little League, and he was the Hornets, and their team was red, white, and blue, and anybody from American Fork can remember there was the Beehive League. And I can't remember the names, but there were the Bees, the Hornets, the Wasps. And Dad was coaching, and Brad was wearing red, white, and blue, which anyone that knows me knows I love red, white, and blue. And Brad hit his first home run. And I remember my mom, I don't think I had ever seen my mom that excited. She started screaming, and she almost jumped over the fence when he hit that home run. And I don't know if I've ever told you that story, Brad, but she was so excited. And my mom, I can't even think of a game of mine that my mom was there. She was always there. She was at every softball game and every basketball game that I ever played in, even away games, and when we were out of town, she would come. My mom loved holidays and birthdays, and she made every holiday and every birthday so special, even Valentine's Day. I remember her taking me to Grand Central or Sprouse Ritz, and you guys probably don't even know what those stores are, to pick out my Valentines, and I would pick out just the perfect Valentines for school. And Easter, we would always color eggs, and when I smell vinegar, I still think of Easter. And we would go on Easter picnics up into the Alpine foothills before Alpine is what it is today. On Halloween, we would carve pumpkins, and I remember my hands freezing because the pumpkins had been outside, and my hands freezing carving those, and picking out the boxed costumes that had the plastic, with the plastic mask that had a little slit in it. I remember picking out Wonder Woman one year, and it was like the best thing ever. And my mom made birthdays so magical for me. And my favorite birthday was my strawberry shortcake birthday. And she made little individual strawberry shortcakes for all of my friends. But the big holidays for our family were the 4th of July and Christmas. And Leslie spoke about Copperton, but my memory of Copperton was the same, where we would go up to the big pancake breakfast in the park. And my mom, literally, Leslie was not kidding, had to talk to every single person before we left. So we were there for hours. But while she was busy talking and socializing, Copperton was awesome. They had games, and everyone knows I'm a little competitive, and they gave out money for prizes. So Laurie was going to win. And $1 for first, 75 cents for second, and a silver or a 50-cent piece for third. I came out of those games, I made bank. I had at least like $3 or $4. And I remember my mom and my grandma Blake, after the games, we would go together and I would buy snow cones with my wedding. It was the best. I miss those times. And then after the fireworks, we would come home and we would get to have homemade ice cream. And after having a fireworks safety lesson from my dad, we would get to light sparklers. And I swear sparklers lasted a lot longer back in those days. They were probably not dangerous or something. But to this day, we celebrate, I have a 4th of July party at my house, and I love the 4th of July. Christmas. This has been a really hard time of year to lose my mom, but Christmas was so important to her, and I have so many memories of Christmas. My mom and dad always had a live Christmas tree, and we had 2 live Christmas trees pretty much my whole childhood, and I don't know, Sherry, if Sherry remembers this, but we would drive to find different Christmas lots to find a Christmas tree with the Ashtons. I don't know how many years we did that, but I don't know why we went to so many. It was still fun because I was with our friends, but we went and drove around until my mom found the perfect Christmas tree. And of course, Christmas pajamas. Something that Leslie and I remember is the oranges and putting cloves in the oranges, because my mom always told me that when she was a kid, oranges weren't around as much as they are now. And when they would get an orange, they were so good and so special, so we would sit and push cloves into the oranges. And again, our fingers would hurt at the time we were done, and then our house smelled so good. My mom always bought me pomegranates at Christmas time. I don't know why, I still do it. My kids, we still eat pomegranates. I love them at Christmas time. My mom loved Sprite and eggnog mixed together. I love Sprite, and I like eggnog. I don't like them together, but my mom loved it. One year, and I believe it was when my parents were remodeling their house, this is a memory that I will always have. My mom said to come down to dinner, or to breakfast. She had made pancakes under the Christmas tree. And she had set up the griddle, and we got to eat downstairs right next to the tree. And I don't know why, but that is such a core memory for me, and I love it. And something else that she taught me was how to appreciate a Christmas tree and to crawl under a Christmas tree. She said, if you want to see something pretty, go lie underneath the Christmas tree and look up. Everybody go home and try it, it's great. My mom also took a ceramics class with a lot of her friends from Durfee Dry Cleaners, and I don't know why, but I kind of tagged along and went with her. I was 20 years old. I was married at the time, and I would go hang out with these old ladies. And I loved them. I loved them all so much, and I learned how to paint and make ceramics, and my mom created the most magical village, Christmas village, that she had at her house. And I'm sure many of you saw that village, and I was fortunate enough I got to paint a couple of them, but I loved that village. And my mom also loved to play the piano at Christmas time. That's when I remember my mom playing the piano. And she loved to play Silver Bells. And today, this morning, and I know it's just a coincidence, but this morning when I went to leave, we've been trying to have the Christmas spirit at our house the past 3 weeks. And Silver Bells was playing as I walked out the door. And that was what I wasn't even going to talk about that. And when my mom started having grandkids, it came to me to help her go shopping for all these beautiful grandkids. We love them so much. And she had to find the most perfect Christmas gifts for these kids. And I would go with her, and it would take us all day to find the perfect gifts for these grandkids. And it always had to be an outfit and a toy. And they had to color coordinate, and they had to match, and and I love my mom, but I mean, I was even getting like, it's 4 o'clock, Mom, come on, let's go home. But she always wanted the grandkids to get what they wanted, and she cared so much for them and wanted them to be happy. And when my dad passed away, our Christmas tradition started to look a little different, and my mom started staying at my house on Christmas Eve, and I loved that I got the chance to give her matching pajamas on Christmas. And she always seemed like she was so happy to get those pajamas. And those will be Christmases that I will treasure forever and I'll never forget. Our family loved camping, and over about 30 years ago, my parents with Don and Sherry and Don found this, what I call a magical place called Rock Creek. And we all instantly fell in love with Rock Creek. And now we go camping every year. There was a few years after my dad passed away that it was really difficult for us to go out there, but we started up the tradition again, and it is my most favorite place in the world. John and I would camp in a tent, and after we started having kids, my mom was like, she had a big, nice trailer. She's like, you need to move in here when we're camping. Well, I don't think she knew we were going to do that for the next 10 years, but we did. And it got crowded after we'd make up all the beds at night, and nobody could barely even move around. But I remember getting all the kids to bed, and I swear there was always other cousins in there with us. And my mom would turn on Man from Snowy River, and it would take about 3 nights for us to finish watching it. But I will never be able to watch Man from Snowy River without thinking of my mom and thinking of those awesome memories in Rock Creek. So as I was thinking about my mom, we've been doing a lot of brainstorming and thinking things. I realized I picked up a lot of traits from my mom. I inherited from her. And I just thought, I better just start writing these down. And some of them is, I love road trips. No, don't get me wrong, getting on a plane and getting somewhere in an hour and a half is amazing. But road trips are classic, and that's where you get the most memories, and you see the most little things of, I love road trips. And like Leslie said, we went to Yellowstone, I don't know how many times, the Oregon coast, I don't know how many times, Mount Rushmore, and so many trips to Disneyland. She taught me how to appreciate a really good Hallmark movie. And she also, I got the trait of remaking beds and reloading the dishwasher after someone has obviously done it wrong. She taught me I picked up the trait of not putting gas in the car. And cleaning the house before we're leaving on a long vacation, so when I come home it's clean, when I should be doing other stuff like packing and getting ready to go. Something else I picked up from my mom is the love of camping and nature and not being afraid to get dirty. I inherited how to appreciate the beauty of the mountains and how blessed we are to live so close to them. I inherited on how to appreciate a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset, a full moon, big white fluffy clouds, or wildflowers on the side of a trail. And I am so grateful that this trait has also passed down to my 3 daughters. When I'm having a bad day or I'm just really busy and I don't have time and I'm not paying attention to what's going on, one of them will point out to me how beautiful the sunset is. And I know that they picked that up from my mom. And one day it was early in the morning and I was taking my daughter to school.
And I don't know about other people, but we literally left the house, I swear, when we shut the door, dishes were still spinning, and it was crazy. And we got out the door and we were on our way, and I was heading east, and the sun was about to come over the mountains, and there were clouds just resting. And it was so beautiful, but I did not notice it until my daughter said to me, "Mom, look at how beautiful those mountains are." And she took her phone out and started taking pictures. And I know it is because of my mom that this has been passed down through all of us, and I'm so grateful for that. I also inherited the love of flowers and gardening. My mom taught me everything I know about gardening. Everything she taught me. When I was young, she would drag me to every nursery, I swear, within a 50-mile radius of our house, searching for the perfect flowers to put in her garden. And I hated it, hated it. It was always so hot, and we were gone for hours and hours. So I finally figured out you can crawl underneath those great big tables of flowers, and there's shade under there. So I would just go hang out on the rocks under the tables until my mom was done. I didn't realize I loved gardening until I had my own house. And before I knew it, I was dragging my girls to nurseries looking for the perfect flowers to put in my garden. And there are a lot of perennial flowers in my flower garden that are starts from my mom's garden. And this past week, those flowers became a lot more precious to me. The last few years have been really rough on our family. We were also sad that my mom had to move from her beautiful home on 5th East, but we were able to make a few new memories. I loved having her. I could go pick her up and she could come to my house for dinner or just hang out. And my family will miss those Sunday afternoon rides where my mom would not stop talking. One of my daughters even timed her. She went 11 seconds without talking one time. But I would give anything to have her talk to me like that again. Some of you may know that my mom is what some people would call a worrier. I picked up that trait. Even when her dementia had taken over her mind, she never forgot who we were, and she would still worry about Leslie, Brad, and I. The CNAs would tell us that she would walk around in the facility at night looking for her kids to make sure that they were home safe in bed, and the sweet CNAs that took care of her always comforted her and let her know that we were safe. When my mom really started to decline and we knew that the end was near, she would not give up, and she kept hanging on longer than anyone predicted. I truly believe it was because she loved her family so much. She was worried about leaving us behind. And I saved my best memory for last. My favorite memory of all was seeing how much my parents loved each other. And we all knew we were loved, and we were so blessed that they were our parents. They both lived such long and happy and fulfilling lives together. Losing my parents has been one of the hardest things I have ever been through. We have all heard this quote before, that grief is the price we pay for love. And I want to tell both of my parents, thank you for giving us so much love. After my dad passed away, my mom would often say how she could not wait to be with my dad again. And even though my heart hurts, and I will miss her for the rest of my life, I am so happy they are together again. I love you, Mom.
Thank you for all those lovely remarks, helping me get to know your mom even better. Even better. I moved into this ward about 17, 18 years ago, and I think I became instantly friends with the Hansens because of their gardening skills. I love the garden, and having been a first homeowner at the time, I had all sorts of questions for them, and we got to talk about a lot of things. I first learned from one of our conversations that Al coached baseball to my oldest brother, and we kind of made that tie together. And I will say, one thing that I always knew when I had a conversation with Peggy is I always knew where I stood. She told it to me straight. If she had anything on her mind, as a friend, as a neighbor, as a priesthood leader, she let me know. And I appreciate her straightforwardness of her personality. I never questioned where her faith was. From sitting in the clerk's office, me and my friend, my other counselor, we always knew Al would come in. He wouldn't just hand us his tithing. He wouldn't set it on the table. He would slap it on the table. Here's my tithing. Years later, when it was just Peggy, I don't know how many times I had to pay a visit to her home because the tithing slip and the checks inside did not match up. And we didn't know what to do with it. So we would make our deposit at the bank, and then we would make a stop at Peggy's house and enjoy a visit with her and give it back to her. But what a special woman to always invite you into her home, to share stories with you. And I really appreciated her friendship. I know that through their faithfulness, her and Hal have been reunited. I thrive for the joy of the covenants that we can take with our Father in heaven, to be connected with our loved one forever and our families forever. I will say it's not easy not having a mom around. I lost my mother almost 25 years ago. And the family is really hard to keep together without a mother. And so I loved hearing that you've already started those traditions to pull yourself together as children, as grandchildren, as family. Those are special moments that you will hold on to. And I want to leave that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. As we close, I want to recognize the casket bearers. River Hansen, Jacob Jones, Isaac Van Wagner, John Slater, Carter Oxborough, and Walker Beezer. Our honorary casket bearers today are Boston Tummelson, Morgan Slater, Brett McBride, and Albie Van Wagner. Our closing hymn will be hymn 166, Abide With Me. Our benediction will be given by Tom Sharp, and then we will meet at the American Folk Cemetery.
Thank you. good to be here with you, brothers and sisters, today as we celebrate Peggy's life. Is it a nice, Brad, that you've got a sister that can speak for you always? Yeah, never a dull moment. Dear Father in heaven, we come before Thee this afternoon, grateful for the life of Peggy Hansen and her husband Al Hansen. We are grateful, Father, to be associated with them and all their goodness. We pray, Father, for their family, that through life and this loss, that they will grow closer together, that they'll rely on each other more, because life is short. As we go to the cemetery to dedicate a place for Peggy next town, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have this moment in time to be together. And we ask you, Father, to be with us the rest of the day as we contemplate in 2 days the birth of thy Son. May we make it special. We're grateful for life and to be together today. We ask these things upon us in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.